we're talking about discipline.
It doesn't matter. It's just things like that. He comes
I'm even better. I love when that happens. You're like, why don't I wear this?
I tell my did you work? And I say it's not a competition.
I just extended the due date.
Did she?
That's the email. This.
I'm just waiting for my dad. My people.
Right. So I'm like, what exactly are you doing today?
Ready? All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We got some visitors in the house today. Thank you for joining us as well. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. We want to call to order the special meeting of the South Utica Lyndhurst Board of Education, our work session today. The time is now 5:37. Mr. Hill, may we get a roll call?
Ms. Falkenberg?
Ms. Falkenberg is on an excused tardy. She should be here shortly.
Mrs. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. King?
Here.
Ms. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Rhine?
Here.
Perfect. We can go right into item 2.1, Dr. Reid.
Good evening, everybody in Board of Education. Oh, that's working very well today. We have one item on our agenda for approval, recommending to the Board of Education the approval of items 2.1, and that is change of assignment for Mrs. Jana Jenkins from assistant principal to interim principal of Brush High School. Effective date is November 27, 2023.
May we get a motion to approve item 2.1?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Rhine, Ms. Lee, any questions or comments?
Happy to have Mrs. Jenkins here.
She's doing a wonderful job at the team, so we're going to continue to keep that momentum going forward under her leadership.
May we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Mrs. Rhine?
Aye.
Ms. Lee?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Item 3, discussion items, 3.1.
Very excited. We do have a discussion item about Envision math update, and I am going to turn that over to Mrs. Bastock. I know we have some guests here, and so we're really excited to see what's been happening in our schools.
Do you want us up here?
Yes, I do want you up
I'm
there.
sure.
And if we can have the principals introduce their staff, that would be great.
As long as you grab the mic.
Oh, would you like to?
Maybe use it.
You can use mine.
yeah.
Oh, we still have one.
I second that.
Thank you, Dr. So I'm going to be very brief because this presentation is all about the teachers and the principals at Sunview and at Adrian. Just want to give you a little background. A couple years ago, you approved Envision as a math curriculum, and it was a very different way of teaching. I think the teachers are nodding back there. Yes, it is. We did a lot of PUD. I can't say how awesome it was this past couple months. We do, if you don't know, we do instructional rounds once a month. All the principals get together. We go to a building. We visit classrooms to align our thinking. We talk about what we see, and we happened to be at Adrian and walked through a couple of rooms and heard some math and was like, oh my gosh, it's working. And that's only because our teachers really dove in and really worked really hard with our kids, because not only was it a learning opportunity for teachers, but the kids had to learn a different way of thinking about math and about talking. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lasky and Ms. Taylor, and I do want you to know that I did ask the teachers that are here, they're going to introduce Ms. Korzanowski and Mrs. Beck to come and present, and I said, hey, I'd like you to share a little about your experience. I'll send you a template. Well, it was done already. I didn't have, so there, I was like, okay, all done. So I'm going to introduce, or I'm going to let
Ms.
Mr. Lasky,
Bastock,
Ms. Taylor.
Before we get started, because I do want to give a shout out. I see Mrs. Tammy Bishko is there.
Oh, yeah.
And she
Hi,
does
Tammy. Hi, Ms.
I know
Bishko.
she does a lot of behind the scenes with the
Yes.
elementary, so I just wanted to give a shout out.
She is the scene. I just am up here talking. She does all the work down there. She really does. So I'm going to turn it over to them too, and you can get started.
No problem. That's why I'm here.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Reid, Mr. Hill, and administrators from central office. Thank you for joining us tonight. Mrs. Taylor and I are here because we're very, very proud of the accomplishments of a couple of our teachers. As Ray had spoken to, Envisions is a different math program. The teachers are actually kind of taking a step backwards and being more of a facilitator than a teacher and minute by minute kind of running the show a little bit. So it's a credit to them for being able to kind of learn the new math program and also bring the students along with them. I guarantee you're going to see some things that are pretty impressive, not only from the student standpoint, but their work as well. Mrs. Taylor.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Principal Taylor from Sunview Elementary, as we are all acquainted. As Mr. Lasky shared, the one thing that I love about Envisions is that it has some principles that we have grown as administrators to really focus on when we're going through our classrooms and walking through. We see consistency. So with the Envisions program, it brings about, number one, focus, because we are working at grade level standards. So that is the expectation, first and foremost. All teachers should be teaching grade level standards. The other thing about Envisions is that there is a beautiful coherence, so that there's building of skills and previous concepts from the previous year, and children can bring in their knowledge of those concepts within that lesson, and you'll see some of that, of how they build those skills through each lesson. And there's also rigor, which we've been talking a lot about, rigor, how important that is. And that is more of that deep command of those math concepts. We want students not just to memorize things, but we want them to be able to really know that conceptual understanding, what that concept really is all about. We want them to be able to follow those procedures and have what's called math fluency. That doesn't mean it's automatically quick, but you have a strategy in which to solve. And then we also want our students to be able to apply their knowledge. And so you'll see all of that within the Solve and Share, which again is the beginning, the launch of the lesson. So we are so proud that 2 of our teachers from each of our schools have volunteered their time this evening to share a little snippet of what they do on a daily basis. It's a beautiful thing to watch children be able to be front and center, be able to articulate, be able to apply those strategies and talk about it, which we call math talk. They're able to use those math strategies, articulate them, and that's what you'll see tonight. So I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely.
So we have Annie Beck. She is no stranger to the district. She's been around for some years, but I'm so happy to have her at Sunview. She has been first grade teacher for a number of years, and then she kept knocking on my door and said, I really love kindergarten. And really, you don't get too many people that say they love kindergarten and want to be back in kindergarten. And so I granted her wish to be back in kindergarten.
What was I asking for?
So I'm so happy because she's been able to see both ends of the scale, first grade and now kindergarten. So thank you, Ms. Beck, for your time and volunteering, and for the beautiful work that you do in the classroom.
Thank you very much.
Tricia's first?
Oh,
Okay.
Tricia's first.
So leading us off will be Ms. Korzanowski. Mrs. Korzanowski is a second grade teacher at Adrian, and through some of our conversations after lessons, she's already shared with me, hey, Ken, you know what? The kids this year, they're so much more inclined than they were last year. They're much more comfortable with the way that Envisions goes and the Solve and Share. One of the important aspects of Solve and Share is the teacher reads the problem to the students and allows them to take a moment to see what they notice about the problem. And then they give time to the students to turn and talk and share with each other their problem-solving ideas. This helps all students learn, because there are some students that are really strong in math. There are other students that they're afraid to speak up or don't really know math very well. The turn and talk allows all students to learn, share the problem-solving strategies, and then even students who might be struggling with a concept at least have some kind of strategy when it's time for the independent practice. With that said, Mrs. Korzanowski.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lasky. Thank you, everybody. So I am a second grade teacher. This is my 23rd year in the district, so I've been around for a while, and I've been through, I think I was counting back, this is my 4th math program that I've been through with the district. So I've been through change, so I kind of know what it's like to go from one to the other. So when we began Envisions last year, I'm going to be honest, there were tears on my end. There were tears probably on the students' end, just because it was different. And when you're getting kids that are in 2nd grade and they've been taught math for 2 years prior in a different way, it was frustrating for them. was frustrating for me because I had to learn how to present the material to them in the best way possible. And as Mr. Lasky said, I had to learn how to take a step back. In the solve and share, the boys and girls really are the problem solvers, and I'm just the facilitator. It gives them time to stop, to think, to talk. Sometimes they have manipulatives where they have to use those to solve the problem, and that's what you're going to see in the little clip that I have. Sometimes I have them working with partners, sometimes I have them in small groups, sometimes I have them independent. It just depends on the skill that we're doing. In the solve and share that we did last week that you're going to see, they were working on solving a 2-digit subtraction problem. And Mrs. Taylor, I believe, said how this program builds from one skill to the next. So on the day before we did this lesson that you're going to see, we did subtraction where we were subtracting a 2-digit number and a 1-digit number. And then the next day we were subtracting 2 2-digit numbers. So it was building. I did go in the very beginning and remind them of what we had done the day before. We talked about some of the strategies that they had used the day before, and so it built the next day onto the 2-digit. And it does involve regrouping, so they do have some manipulatives where they have to trade in some base 10 blocks. I purposely had them in pairs, and I gave them only enough materials for one person. So they had to share the materials. Because I had them in pairs, I didn't want them each to be able to take out the base 10 blocks and then work independently. So I purposely gave them just enough materials for one, so they had to work together and they had to talk. So if you want to go ahead and...
Today, we're going to continue subtracting just like we did yesterday using our place value blocks. This time, instead of subtracting a single-digit number, we're going to be subtracting a 2-digit number. 2 digits. Your solve and share for today looks like this. Boys and girls, put your eyes to my screen. The problem reads, you have 42 pipe cleaners. You use 19 of the pipe cleaners. How many pipe cleaners do you have now? Use your place value blocks to help you solve. Draw your place value blocks to show your work. Yesterday we talked about how you can use the place value blocks, but then once you put them back in the bag, I can't see your work if you don't draw them on your paper, right? So you need to draw it out for me. You are working with a partner, so I would like you to work together. If you disagree with your partner, it is okay. We can talk through where the differences are. I will give you 5 minutes for this solve and share. While you're working, I'm going to come around and I'm going to talk to some of the groups and see what you're doing, okay? Remember, you're having math conversations. You are using your place value blocks as tools, not toys, okay? This solve and share is on page 221. Turn to that page. As soon as I see you are there, I will set my timer for 5 minutes. When my timer rings, we will come together and we'll talk about your answer.
So you can see here that they're very used to doing this. They know what to do.
41. Okay, friends, my timer is on. Island Dallas, where do we before I start this problem? We should start by doing it.
So you can see they were all pretty focused. They were all on the right page. They all had their materials out, and they were all having those math conversations. So just reminding them of the procedures and the rules at the beginning, just kind of those things that we think we maybe take for granted, but just reassuring them every single day that it doesn't change. The expectation is still the same, and they did just get started and get going. So in this problem, they did have to regroup a set of 10, and the base 10 blocks that they had were a full set of 10, and they do not break apart. So in order to break it apart, they had to physically put it back in the bag and pull out 10 little individual cubes. So I did give them 5 minutes. I have a timer with a color bar on it so they can kind of see my timer moving as it goes so they know about how much time they have left. And then when the timer rings, I chose a group to come up to the board and share their solution.
Second grade, I heard my timer go off. Please stop what you're doing. Please stop what you're doing. Okay. Lionel and Dallas, can I ask the two of you to just both bring your book and come up here, please? Screen. That's okay. Just bring your book up here.
second grade, they use the word equation.
Oh, that's good.
And they know what it means.
And write your equation on the board that you came up with, Dallas. All eyes are up here now, watching Dallas. Okay. So the equation that Dallas came up with and Lila agreed was 42 minus 19. They then needed to figure out how to solve that equation. Lila, what was the first thing we did to solve that equation, honey?
So, we made 4
Okay, that's, you don't even need to draw those in. If I see a long stick, I know that's a full set of 10.
They use so much technology.
It's
really good.
And they love it. They want to be the ones to come up and share. So being able to find those kids that may not always be the one to raise their hand, but feel confident enough to come up and share on the board is really cool to watch.
So that's 1 set of 10. She goes.
She's,
Sets of 10. You check your team still right now. That's 3 sets of 10. And that's 4 sets of 10. And then what else did you pull out of your bag? Okay, so then she had 2 ones. So she had 4 sets of 10, and she had 2 ones.
but I had to minus 19.
So we were able to take away a set of 10, correct?
And then I X'd out another 10 and put it in the 1.
Okay. Why did you have to do that, Lila?
Because only had 2 ones and I had to have a 9.
Okay, so you didn't have enough of the 1, so you had to take some from the 10 to be.
She did what, Trish?
she only had
This is what I
That's what she said.
That right here, what did she do?
she only had 2 ones and she needed to be able to subtract 9 of them, so she didn't have enough. So she needed to get some more. So it's our borrowing, it's crossing off and making a 2 a 12, but this is getting them to understand why they're doing it. They're physically moving the blocks.
Got it, okay.
Lila, so you had 2 in the 1's place, and now you brought a set of 10 over. How many 1s do you have now, Lila? 12. 12, the 2 that were there, plus the 10 that you brought over. Now, how many do you have to take away, Lila? 9. So do you have 9 to take away?
Yeah.
You do, go ahead.
Yeah,
More than that, so you're good. Go ahead. I need your kids to be so thinking.
Got you, so she crossed that one out. Got it. Okay.
She did. Now, what I'm noticing as we're working through these lessons here, as they're crossing off that 1 and they're carrying it over into the 1s, not all of them are quite understanding that that's regrouping. Some of them are thinking that that's the actual subtracting part. So my job right now as we're working through this is to get them to understand that 5 sets of 10, or 4 sets of 10 and 2 1s is 42, and so is 3 sets of 10 and 12 1s. They don't quite, not all of them quite understand that yet, but that's why we just keep working and keep doing it, and I keep reiterating and asking the same questions, how many do you have in the 10s now?
And the other one you broke apart and made it into 10 1s. And then how many 1s were left over, Dallas? 3. So when I add 42 and I subtract away 19, Dallas, what is my final answer? 20. Can you go ahead and write that in there, hon? Write it right up front. Yeah, 23 pipe cleaners is the answer to this problem. Raise your hand if your team got 23 as your answer.
So there were quite a few kids that their groups also got the same answer. So I pulled some samples of student work. I pulled about 5 of them. They were all different ones so that you can kind of see what they actually wrote in their workbooks.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
The tiers that you brought, is that because you went from this to those blocks?
It was just because I didn't know how to, in my teacher's manual, it said, okay, read the solve and share problem and then give them 5 or 10 minutes to solve it on their own and then go around and, talk about their answers. And their pages were blank and they didn't know what to do, and I had to learn the facilitator process. So that's where my tears came from, learning how to ask the questions to guide them through the problem solving.
So let's be honest here. Putting the book aside and putting the blocks aside,
Mm-hmm.
how do you take your mind from almost 30 years of education? Let's be real, look at this paper.
Yeah,
How
no.
do you go from here to the blocks? Isn't that difficult in itself?
It is, and I don't know that I understood the actual process behind regrouping until I taught it as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, when I learned it that way, I didn't really understand it. It was just, I was taught that's how you do it and that's how you solve the problem and you move on. So teaching them the number sense and the reason why behind what they're doing, that part I had. So just teaching them how to be productive problem solvers was my biggest struggle with this switch to this program. Honestly, because I've done this for so long, the Chromebooks have been a blessing in the classroom because they can do so much with them, but they've also taken away that productive struggle because they could click on that Chromebook and they could find the answer to anything that they want, and so they want everything instant. So a lot of times they don't want to take the time to solve it. So this process allows me to help build that back, where they're now excited to do it because now they know they can do it. And it took us a while last year to get there. This year, with this group coming in and them already having had this for a whole year, it was totally different. Starting off the year was so much easier because they knew the expectation, they had the vocabulary to be successful, they knew the process, so it was a lot easier this year, and I'm really excited, honestly, for next year when I get a group of second graders that will have already had envisions in kindergarten and first grade. So just to see the growth there as well.
Now, Ms. Beck, I know it's not your turn because you're not first, but with you going from first grade to kindergarten, were you able to identify and see the disconnect on kids that have struggled with your being exposed to both backwards?
Yes, so number sense is the big thing. We had to really focus on number sense. I think that with this new math program, we were expected to allow the students to think for themselves, right? To come and discover. As teachers, we're also used to modeling everything. As soon as we start a lesson, we want to model that lesson first, then practice, and then assess. Whereas with the vision program, we're allowing the kids to hear the problem out and think for themselves and think deeper, become critical thinkers, and applying information that they already know. So using that background knowledge. It doesn't matter how small that knowledge is, and then applying that to their activity that they're working on. So.
If you take a quick look at the packet that I gave you, so the first sheet on top is the little girl was actually on the screen, so that was what her page looked like in her book, and it pretty much matches what she did up on the screen. If you look at the young man's page, the second page in your packet, he had a little bit of a different strategy. He took away that full set of 10, then he took away 9. He took away the two ones that he had, but he drew in that full set of 10 and he took 7 of them away. So he didn't physically break it apart, but he was able to then individually count how many he had. So he had the same idea, he just didn't quite break it apart yet. So he wasn't quite at the break apart yet. If you look at the third sheet in your packet, that student was able to draw the sets of 10, and he didn't need to draw each individual little one to show that it was a group of 10. He was just able to draw a straight stick, so he was seeing the full set of 10 that way. And then in the next page, he pretty much did the same thing, but I photocopied this one because if you look down at the bottom where he put his answer, he wrote the word sum, S-U-M. Now, it wasn't the sum because this wasn't an addition problem. However, the fact that he knew to label his answer with a math term and just, he showed the word difference and not sum, but we had just finished addition. So he had heard that term more. So that tells me I know we need to go back and kind of work on that terminology. But the fact that he had that and used it there, I thought was huge that a second grader was able to label their answer like that. And then In the last one, I think hers was very similar to Xing off. That was the next to the last one. And then in the very last one, again, he had those full sets of 10. He labeled his 10s 20, 30, 40, so you knew what he had, carried them over, and you could see that he crossed them off. So again, this was a wide range of kids. One of these kids is a repeat second grader, so he did second grade with me last year and is in here again. Some of these kids, when they tested at the beginning of the year in iReady, were very high, either at grade level or slightly above, and some of these kids tested one grade level below. So the same problem they were all able to do, and they were all able to come up with some way to show their answer. The last little clip that I have shows, at that point we probably should have been done and sat down and moved on to the next page. However, the little girl that was on the screen said, but wait, she said, we learned another strategy and I know how to check my answer. So we had learned all these other strategies for subtraction, and she wanted to show that she could use one of those other strategies to get the same answer, to prove that the answer she got was correct. So it's just a minute or two that she shows that answer.
We did learn different strategies in topic 5 for subtraction. So some of you may have used a different strategy. This problem specifically asked us to use the place value blocks. So what Lila and Dallas did was show us how to do that.
And to see for right, we could use break apart.
Oh, show me what that looks like, Lila. So you're doing this to check your answer to see if it would be correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're using a second strategy that we have learned. What would that look like then as a break apart strategy, honey? So this would be a different way to try subtraction or to show it. When you're going to break 19 into 10.
So she broke it apart, and then she took the 42 and she did a subtraction problem, 42 minus 10, and then she subtracted the 9. So she basically took what she did with the blocks, but she carried it over and then did it in equations. So one thing we had to kind of learn with this program is it teaches all these strategies, and not every child has to master every strategy. So we've worked through the, don't cry if you don't understand this strategy. I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to ask you to practice it, because you don't know if it works for you if you don't practice it or not. But if it doesn't work for you, put it aside. I don't care how you get to the end, just so long as you get to the end and get the right answer. And in my class, we talked about how we can take two separate paths to get to the same place, and it doesn't matter if I take path A or path B, as long as we get to the same ending place. And so, as long as they have a strategy, so we have gone back now as grade level teams, and we've sort of adjusted our assessments. So instead of specifically asking a student, can you use the break apart strategy to find me the sum, it just says use any strategy to show me the sum. So as long as they can pick one strategy that works for them and they can correctly show their answer, that's sufficient for our grade level. And I believe it shows assess. It shows assess for the kid. It does. Now, today we moved into the same type of problem, except this time in their solvent share, they did have to come up with 2 ways to show their answer. So at some point it does require them to master more than one strategy, but it's never specifically asking them to master a specific strategy, just mostly what works for them, that they can explain so they understand why they're doing it and not just going through the motions of doing it.
I'm crying.
That's outstanding.
I'm crying right now. I would fail second grade right now if I had to sit in that
I really
class.
like the idea that you,
And I got a whole master's degree. Just throw the whole math away.
you know, I like the idea when you said that you're teaching, I mean, that was, it's not just one strategy. And that's really also the self-awareness for our students, really understanding how they learned and making choices on that piece, because that's not always been the case sometimes in education. This is where you learn this way. And so that's really great to hear.
A few weeks ago, Mr. Lasky was in my classroom doing another observation, and I have a little boy who is significantly below grade level, especially in reading. Math, he's a little bit higher and a little more confident, but he still struggles, especially with reading. And I had him in a group with another student, and he had wonderful success in finding the answer to the problem, and he was using the hundreds chart. And he even went up to the board, he shared his solution, and when I sent them back, his partner that he was working with had a different strategy. So I allowed the two of them to take time to teach each other their strategy, and the smile on his face to see that he was able to teach somebody something that they didn't know, and he got something back. It was truly one of those like magical moments. So it's really amazing some of the things you see, and even just those 10, 15-minute little solve and shares.
That was great, thank you.
All right, are you guys ready to hear about kindergarten?
And I love kindergarten.
All right, so I wanted to share about the solve and share. Originally, the solve and share format was designed for whole class instruction, where kids come to the carpet or is sitting at their desk and the teacher read out the problem and they share their strategies out loud as a whole. We have taken it to a different step where we're now having students work with partners, working in small groups, some work individuals. You could go to the next slide, please.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So I just want to share that with this new math curriculum that we're using, it offers a multitude of benefits that significantly contribute to the overall learning and the development of our students. So one, we want to talk about encouraging productive struggle. Mrs. Taylor told us about productive struggles last year and this year, and yes, we have productive struggles with our kinders. It allows the students to engage in problem-solving activities where they might experience some initial struggles, which fosters resilience, perseverance, and it teaches them that it's okay to encounter challenges and that finding solutions often require persistence and effort. So this year we are really talking about with our boys and girls, it's okay to make mistakes, that this is the perfect time for us to practice. And because of that, they may have some struggles and they may have some strength as well. But because they are keeping through, they're not giving up, you can start seeing that they are persevering through the strategies and the struggles there. It builds independence and problem-solving skills by encouraging the students to utilize their tools and strategies independently. So they gradually become more confident in their abilities. They learn to think critically, analyze situations, and employ various methods to solve problems, nurturing their problem skills. So as you know, that some students like to work by themselves, but also kids like working with their friends. So in my classroom, we talk about choosing your best learning environment, but we also talk about choosing your best learning partner. So when they decide to choose a partner to solve their problem, you don't want to choose a partner that you're going to play with. You want to choose a partner that's going to help support you, going to hold your accountability. So we're building that robust vocabulary. So we're choosing our partners that help us, that encourage us. So if we do come up and have some type of struggle, that we can depend on another 5-year-old to help us with the answer. So it promotes ownership and explanation of thinking. So working in pairs and sharing solutions, we use a document hammer to encourage students to take ownership of their work. So after they get finished solving the problem with their partners or independently, we come back to the carpet and we share as a whole group. And so as much as we want to call every single child, we cannot. But we did choose 5 or 6 partners, and they come up and they show their work, just like how we saw Trish class was able to come up and share how they're thinking. The students are able to share theirs, and they're very highly motivated because they work so hard and they want to show you what they know. Oftentimes we don't get to every single child when we're walking around due to time. So when they know that we have that time that they can actually share out, that's their highlight. Okay, it fosters growth and progress. So over the time, the discomfort initially felt, you're going to hear this, by both the student and the teacher, it gives ways to visible progress and mastery. So kindergartners start showcasing learned skills and strategy, displaying improved problem-solving abilities, and increase their confidence. So data collection for supportive teaching. So we want to note that not all students solve problems correct, so it's crucial for the teacher. This process helps gather valuable data on individual problem-solving approaches and misconception in areas that require additional support. It aids in tailoring future lessons and targeting small group sessions to address this student's needs. We also get to celebrate the milestones, so that's when they come and share. We're celebrating their milestone and accomplishments. We witness kindergartners take pride and feel accomplished as they achieve math goals. They contribute a positive learning environment, celebrating these milestones, which nurtures a sense of achievement and motivates and further encouragement with their math concepts. So in summary, the Solid Share activities within the math curriculum is a rich learning experience that goes beyond the mere problem solving. They cultivate resilience, independence, communication, and critical thinking skills, while allowing the teachers to gather valuable insights for customized support and nurturing a positive learning environment.
Emery's mother asked her to bring the towels in off the line. Her basket can hold less than 7 towels. How many towels might Emily bring in? You can give more than one answer. Show how you know your answers are right.
So for the Solid Share, normally I just read the problem out loud, have the student choose the best learning partner, and I give them a toolkit. I don't tell them what manipulatives they can use. I want to see what they are going to choose on their own, since we've been learning different strategies throughout the school year. So here in some of the images, you see that we have some of our kindergartners. They're taking out their manipulatives, some using a tin frame with the red and yellow color dots. Some use dry erase boards and markers. They go back and check their work. They're working with their partners. I like how they're doing here. It was a matching, so they're matching, making sure that they're comparing the 6 and the 7. And you just see how engaged they are. They take it very seriously. You know, this is one of the fun times to be inside the kindergarten classroom. That they are highly engaged, and you can see that the learning is happening. So I'm going to show you a video clip of our kids just working, solving the problem.
That's a good five. That's a good five, I'm just saying.
We're working. That's over 60 days. She actually is a little professional. She's going back and
She's late.
checking the letters.
She is not happy with that S.
Yeah.
It's kind of makes me think that I'm a hard teacher because when she goes back and keeps changing her spelling. Go back and check your work. You need to know your alphabet in a different way that shows.
So now I can do it like a 6.
So if you want to show a different way, he's using a die so they understand that they were finding numbers 1 to 7, and it was interesting to see that the kids picked up the die because they know that there was only 6 dots on the die. So they were using that there. And the other girl who was writing, she just said, oh, I can show another way using a 10 frame. So she wrote a sentence, and now she's going to go back and draw her own 10 frame. And I'm going to show another way to have lesson 7. And in the background, you can hear the kids. They're all talking with their partners and they're
Right.
engaged in their tasks, completing the work.
At least they ain't writing cuss words.
And that's Kimberly. Thank you.
That was outstanding.
This is what curriculum people were nerdy about. So, I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, you can hear the math language, these ladies and their colleagues. If you go into rooms right now from K to 6, this is what you hear. You hear them talking, you hear them using the vocabulary, where before we were making up things to think, okay, we just, do they understand it? But now they're like digging deep into the math. Ms. Bishko, come up here. Because honestly, she does do a lot more walkthroughs for the K through 3. And when I went to Adrian, to be honest, it was like one of my first elementary visits, and I was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm hearing kids talk math. And so I'm going to let Ms. Bishko say a few words about what she sees, because she's in there way more often, and Ms. Beck still wants to talk.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So I'm going to say, so excited about yes. So last year I was in first first grade. It was my first year using the program. And so I had to start teaching differently. And there were so many things, so many lessons. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this next year. This is not it. And I kept going to Mrs. Taylor's office. I said, Mrs. Taylor, do you understand what they having these kids do? Like, this is way beyond rigorous. They're not ready yet. And as I'm walking up and down the hallway, I do hear the second and third grade teachers teaching. And I'm like, oh my goodness. It comes back. They're working on this strategy in second and third grade. I can't skip a lesson, you know, like, so it was, and I went back and I shared that with her. I said, I have to stick with the program with fidelity. And so I knew when I came down to kindergarten that I had to make sure they had the number sense, they have the vocabulary, so when they do move up, that they can take that and they can show several different strategies to solve their answer, and they're going to be prepared for the solve and share. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
And I don't really have much to say. Obviously, at my core, instruction is the key to everything. So absolutely thank you to the teachers. I do try to insert myself in a lot of their classrooms in the most unintrusive way that I can. But it's really about giving our teachers a tool that can really help them enhance what they naturally know how to do, which is educate students. And so this was one of those tools we were able to find to really support what is in their core, which is that teaching and the love of learning. And so this was just one, choice that we made that we're very, very proud of, and we thank you for all of your support. But we truly, truly know that our students have the capability to do so much more, and it all starts with what we put in front of them, and that's grade level materials that are rigorous, that are really going to allow our teachers to give our students what they need, and that's what we're really working towards in our department. That's all I have to say.
I'm just gonna let everybody know they had Harris's. That's why they so great. Because they had Harris kids.
I think one of the words that you heard the teachers talk about was the productive struggle. And people talk about vision. Our vision has been the destination school community, but you also talk about instructional vision. And so that's one of the things that you heard Ms. Bishko and of course our teachers talk about is really perseverance and really stretching it, exposing them to grade level material, and when they don't quite get it the first time, it's really sometimes that productive struggle where they learn and really take control of their own education. So we're just so impressed with the work of our teachers and our principals and our curriculum department. So we thought we would just highlight it here this evening, and just what an outstanding job. So I'd like to give another round of applause. And the good news is there's nothing that has to follow that great presentation. But that's all we have this evening, and that was just outstanding. Thank you.
No need for executive session, so we don't have to do that. Our next meeting is next week on the 19th. Are we venue changing or staying here?
We're here.
Okay, we are here? All right, perfect. I think that's all.
Yep.
Good. All right. May we get a motion to adjourn? It is now 6:21.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.